Hey, welcome everyone to the first episode of the WTF podcast. We are going to dive in today. This is a solo episode. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. The biggest funk I've been in didn't start with a crisis. It started with 1 to 3 glasses of wine at 5 p.m. every night. And the fact that I didn't know how to name a single emotion I was feeling. But on January 31st, 2023, a Facebook Live in my feed changed everything. To set the stage, I'm going to read an excerpt from chapter 3 of my book, What the Funk. As I scrolled through my Facebook feed on that chilly evening on January 31st, 2023, the thought, what in the blazes is she doing, flashed through my mind. There in the midst of the 20-degree weather was my friend Jenny, standing outside in an electric blue bikini and a robe. The recent storm had left a snowy blanket around her pool in North Texas, and she was live on Facebook, ready to plunge into the icy water. Intrigued, I unmuted her video to uncover the reason behind her polar plunge, and I quickly realized it wasn't just a wild stunt. Jenny was celebrating 100 days of living alcohol-free. Now, at the time, end of January 2023, I had been in an executive role for about 2.5 years. On paper, I had the kind of role I had dreamed about for years, the kind of work that you do and you work late nights for and sacrifice your weekends for. I was the only woman on the executive team. I was sitting in meetings where I finally had a seat at the table and could make decisions that mattered. But about 6 to 8 months before that night, my role had begun to shift. About half of my responsibilities had moved into an area that was completely outside my skill set. And honestly, my natural gifting. And at first, I told myself I would figure it out because I always had before. I had built my career on working harder, learning faster, and proving myself. But this time, no matter how many hours I put in, I felt like I was constantly behind. I was one step away from being found out. And that is when the imposter syndrome really dug its claws in. It was like I was walking into every meeting with this neon sign over my head flashing, saying, "She has no idea what she's doing. Look here, look here." And here's the thing. Like many people, I think I had tied my self-worth so tightly to my professional success that the thought of failing at any part of my role felt like I was failing as a person. I had spent the last 15 years of my life climbing the corporate ladder, working 60, 70 hours a week because I believed that title and that salary and that equity and that influence would finally prove that I was good enough. So there I was. I had, quote unquote, arrived. I had the title, the paycheck, the respect on paper, but inside, I was unraveling. The pressure was constant. The anxiety was very real. And I couldn't see a way forward without burning out or numbing out. And guess what won? Numbing out. So my evenings had a pattern during that season. At 5 p.m., I'd pour myself a glass, 1 or maybe 3 glasses of wine from my 90-bottle wine fridge. I told myself that I was, quote unquote, unwinding from the day. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Truthfully, though, those glasses of wine was my way of avoiding the feelings I didn't know how to name. Now, maybe for you, it's not wine. Maybe for you, it's staying late at the office or doom scrolling or binge watching Netflix. Right, whatever it is, whatever that thing is, it's the escaping and the ignoring and the numbing of what you are actually feeling. That night, after seeing Jenny's video, I was on a FaceTime meeting with my mentor at the time. Her name is Raimi. And she asked me, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I just blurted out, I'm like, "Honestly, I'm not great. My health is in the tank. Work is super stressful. I'm drinking every night. And I told her about this Facebook Live of Jenny's that I had seen and how intrigued I was by it. And she said, well, why don't you just do what Jenny did? Go 100 days alcohol free, dial back into your nutrition, get to feeling better. And honestly, I had a deep knowing that I knew that I needed to do that, but I was so scared. I was terrified. I'd literally just finished a glass of wine, but somewhere deep down, I knew something had to change. I had gotten to the end of myself. I was sick of myself. I was disgusted because I was living so incongruently. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to tell anybody about it. I didn't post about it, which is unusual for me. I didn't want to fail in front of thousands of people. And I didn't believe that I could actually make it 100 days without drinking a glass of wine. My husband knew. Eventually, my family figured it out, but that was it. A few weeks in, it was my birthday, and my girlfriends had surprised me with a trip to a winery where we're going to do a wine tasting and do some painting. And they had no idea. Talk about awkward. But I chose not to drink. And for the first time, I realized that I can have fun without drinking. Now, here's what shifted for me in that time. I started sleeping through the night and waking up feeling rested. And I got to tell you, there were so many mornings after drinking that 1 to 3 glasses of wine the night before where I was just dragging. I had a headache. I was sick to my stomach. And sleeping well and waking up rested was like a revelation for me. I so covet that every single day now. My mornings were clear, not foggy. And emotionally, I started getting in tune with what I was feeling, being able to start at this point to name those emotions and not judge myself for them. And here's the truth. Building that muscle of being able to name and acknowledge and attune your emotions is something that you can build. And I was starting to build it one day at a time. And friends, I'll tell you, even today, I am still building that muscle. That one choice to take 100 days and go alcohol free changed everything for me. The role that I was in at work, the one that felt so misaligned to my skill set, where I was feeling so much imposter syndrome, across that 100 days, conversations started occurring. Doors were opening for me to step into what was really true for me about how I was feeling. And as a result, my role changed. And we'll have to get into all of the details of that in another episode. But because I had stopped drinking, I was in a place to have those conversations and to speak what was true for me. And as a result, we changed my role so that I was 100% using gifting and my talents, doing something that I truly enjoyed for a company that I absolutely adored. Holy cow, that was a game changer. Opportunities appeared because I was in a place where I was mentally more clear, emotionally a little bit more stable, if you will. I had conversations and doors opened. I ended up meeting somebody who was just signed on to write a book, and she shared her publisher with me. And so because of that, I've written this book, and this podcast now is a thing, right? I self-published a journal, and I had collaborated with some very incredible people. Now, had I been drinking to numb and escape my emotions, there is no way that those conversations would have taken place. I would not be here today. Jenny's video on Facebook that night was divine intervention. And that single scared step that I took to say, what if I could go 100 days without drinking? That one step, that was my first pivot out of the funk. And sometimes the pivot requires multiple steps, but you don't need to know all of the steps before you take the one. Just take the one. Because what's going to happen is when you take that next best step out of the funk, the next step after that is going to become obvious, and the step after that is going to become obvious. And what will transpire is something that will probably change your life. Let me tell you, today, you guys, I am over 900 days alcohol free. And people ask me all the time if I will ever drink again. And here's what I tell them: I feel so good physically, emotionally, and mentally not drinking. I'm not sure why I would ever start again. But more importantly, I believe with every ounce of my being that the calling on my life is to equip millions of people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk and how to pivot out of it. And if I'm regularly drinking that 1 to 3 glasses of wine, it is going to impact my ability to live out this mission. And this is so much more important than me having a phenomenal glass of Pinot Noir with a fancy meal. Now, listen, the funk you're in right now might not look like mine did. It might not be as monumental as using alcohol as a coping mechanism. Sometimes you're in a funk because you've just woken up on the wrong side of the bed, or you're replaying a conversation or an argument in your head, and it's just have you in just this kind of negative scarcity, fear-based mindset. Or maybe you're just off and you don't know why. On this podcast, we are going to dig deep into the funk that we find ourselves in on all levels, from the big life-altering funk to the everyday ones that quietly drain our energy. We're going to talk about practical and doable ways to pivot out of the funk. And listen, if you are here listening or watching this episode, you are part of the million people that I am reaching. Help me by sharing this episode with others, subscribing to my YouTube channel at Molly Positive Pants, and joining me on this journey. We're going to get real, raw. We're going to share some stories. We might even do some live coaching. I'm looking forward to doing that. And I want to take you on this journey. Look, I haven't figured out all of the ways to pivot out of the funk. I am still a work in progress, but I've learned some things along the way, and I want to help you do the same. So join me on this journey. See you next time.